Okay, welcome. So today I wanted to talk a little bit more about leadership. What makes a great leader and why currently in Britain do we seem to have so few great leaders? So, enjoy. So I've been reading a lot recently about leadership. I'm working a lot with leaders at the moment. I'm just creating a course over the last year called The Compassionate Leader. How do we become more emotionally intelligent and heart-centered as leaders? And I see that we really don't have an education for this. So I want to talk a little bit about Kouzes and Posner's book, The Leadership Challenge, and the 5 principles for, great exemplary leadership. And kind of linking into Britain, because as I'm recording this, Britain is, we've got Keir Starmer, who is the Prime Minister at the moment, and, people are questioning his leadership. There's been a call for a re-election, and then we've also had 14 years of Tory government before that. And, I was reading a book a couple of weeks ago about this and just realizing, wow, what the Tory party has done. And I just wanted to go into this a little bit, but beginning, well, what makes a great leader? So the first one, according to Kouzes and Posner, is you've got to model the way. The first step of exemplary leadership is inward. And I think this, for me, beginning why Britain has so few is that, and it links into the boarding school that I explore a lot, is that in Britain, we put people into positions of power depending on what school they went to rather than what skill or how good they are at leadership. It's more, oh, you went to Eton, you went to Harrow, right, you get a position of power. And I wanted to read out a quote from the new provost of Eton. So he started, I think, last year. So it's Nicholas Coleridge. And he says, I'm bound to say that if I meet someone I've never met before, for example, if I'm traveling abroad or through work or something, and it emerges they were at Eton, I feel an interest in them that is multiplied at least 10. If we are being completely candid, I do accept that I prefer the company of Etonians to the company of people from any other school in the world. And it is that, and Robert Vercake talks about this in Posh Boys, is this idea that the top jobs are given to their friends. They're in that network. Are they good leaders? Well, according to Nick Duffell and his book Wounded Leaders, no. Boarding school does not create good leaders. And I've done other videos about that, but I just wanted to dial in that we've got to model the way. We've got to go within. And in boarding school, that's the last thing that we do is go within. We shut down the inner world. We cut off our emotions. Nick Duffell in the book Wounded Leaders, he said, the principal effect of boarding is a problem with emotions. This is not only a survival tactic, but also consciously encouraged by the traditions of the school. You're not allowed to look at your emotions. You can't have tears. You can't have anger. You can't have, joy. It's like you've got to put a lid on it. And therefore that means you cannot make good decisions. You cannot model the way because you are not able to go within. The second bit they talk about within this is that we need to practice what we preach. Remembering that what we do speaks so loudly that people can't hear what we say. We need to model the way. And I see that our politicians, they do not. Our leaders do not model the way. They do not do what they say they're going to do. They come in with this, right, we're going to change this, do that. And as I said last week with or 2 weeks ago, the inquiries, there has been an inquiry for ICSA, cost nearly £200 million. There were 20 recommendations put down and none so far, hopefully mandatory reporting is going to be put in, but none 2 years later have been put in. 200 million. And this is it. We do not model the way. The second thing about exemplary leadership, great leaders, is you inspire a shared vision. And I see our leaders in Britain have no vision, really. Maybe there are some who come in and give a good vision, but going back to the first one, they don't put it in place. They don't model the way. And I think there was a Channel 4 documentary. It was 4 parts. You can find it on YouTube. Boris Johnson, about his life, and talked about when he got into number 10 Downing Street, became Prime Minister. It was like someone said, it was like he'd arrived. He'd succeeded. He'd got to become Prime Minister. And that was it. I'm done now. I don't need to do anything. Because that was his goal, to become Prime Minister. It wasn't to be a leader. It wasn't to serve the people. And I think this is what a great leader does. He has a vision, a shared vision, which is good for everyone. Whereas I see that, many of our leaders in this country currently, it's all about them or about their institution. It's not about the global. Well, what about the people? And as I shared again 2 weeks ago, it's always the duty of care. It's always to the institution. It's never to the people, never to the children. That's why sexual abuse, the grooming gangs have gone on, because, we can't admit this because that will ruin the institution. But what about the people? So that's the second thing. Inspire a shared vision. And talks in the book about exemplary leadership. Leaders look forward, create a vision of a better possible future. And of course, they must share that vision with others. My vision, I'll share that a little bit now, is to transition all boarding schools into sixth form colleges for, an end to under 16 boarding. The research I've seen, I've looked at, it doesn't make any sense. So that's my vision, and I have others as well. Another is mandatory reporting. So these are my visions, and I think that's what we need as leaders coming up now, is they need to have really strong, powerful visions of, right, bring peace to the UK. Let's take care of the children. Let's bring prosperity, goodness to the world. So third one is challenge the process. So if something's not working as a leader, then we need to challenge the process. So for example, there's many things which are not working in Britain. We need leaders to come in and challenge it, go, no, that's not okay. And I think, reading Oliver Bullough's book, Butler to the World, the level of corruption that's in the UK, it's just incredible. He talks about here, Firtash was a man who was being investigated by the FBI, and he was a Ukrainian, essentially mobster, who'd come to the UK and was basically laundering money in the UK. And he says, while members of the British Parliament took Firtash's money, the Duke of Edinburgh shook his hand, and Cambridge offered him its highest honours. The US Embassy in Kiev kept cabling its suspicions about what he was up to, and FBI agents kept following them up. Given Firtash's swift ascent from failing canned food company manager to multi-billionaire dollar gas magnate, he might still be beholden to the forces that helped him rise so quickly, saying he was involved in corrupt money. But he says, basically nothing really. We didn't do anything, the UK. It says here, the British government's focus had been on making as much money as possible, and it had actually subcontracted its checks on the origin of that money to Firtash's own lawyers. So rather than them doing the checks, they've got Firtash's own lawyers to do the checks. It's like, and so this is what he says in this book, is that, London is, he talks a lot about here, by most conservative estimates, hundreds of billions of pounds of criminal money flow through the city of London every year, most of it stolen from vulnerable people in some of the world's poorest countries. Britain has essentially outsourced responsibility for stopping money laundering to the money launderers, and is failing to stop dirty money as a result. Yeah. And so it's that we've got to challenge, a great leader challenges that process. Well, that's not working. we're not prosecuting money laundering. We're not prosecuting the grooming gangs. We're not doing this. We've got to change. And I'm seeing that now with, Starmer's government. They're starting to talk about mandatory reporting, doing inquiries and changing. I'm personally not sure if another inquiry is the answer. Because, as I said, ICSA, 7 years, 6 years, 200 million. Nothing has been done. Nothing so far. The fourth practice for exemplary leader is enabling others to act. We've got to empower them. A great leader creates leaders, not followers. And I see that, our leaders, certainly during COVID, the scandals which have come out about how much money they gave to their friends, for PPE. I think David Mellor, the Conservative, he earned 500 million through a deal for PPE. He'd never done PPE before in his life, So they say here, leadership by definition isn't about trying to do something great as a lone ranger. It's about inspiring others to share the dream and then creating the circumstances so they can do their absolute best work. Exemplary leaders believe in the potential of people on their team. They trust them to do great work and give them the autonomy to go out and crush it. So I feel that our leaders don't trust us and we don't trust them. In another book called, which I've gone through before, On Becoming a Leader by Warren Bennis, he says one of the basic ingredients of leadership is integrity. It's trust. People have got to trust you. And how? By doing what you say you will do. If you say you're going to put this law in, you've got to do it. Do we get that in the UK? Very, very little of that will happen. So we don't really trust. So I think the next step, what do we do, is we've got to start enabling people to act, creating leaders in the community. We've got to create leaders who can start to make changes. So then the fifth practice of exemplary leadership, according to Kouzes and Posner, is encourage the heart. And I think why Britain has so few good leaders is that these boarding school systems, these institutions, don't encourage the heart. They tell us to squash the heart, to cut off for emotional intelligence, be command and control. But that form of leadership no longer works. It's emotional intelligence. It's creating a safe container and a safe space for people to work in. The secret weapon of the exemplary leadership, love. We need to love what we do, the people with whom we do it, and the people we're blessed to serve. It takes courage to do extraordinary work. Remember, the word courage literally means heart in Latin. So I think why we have such few leaders is we've been putting the people into positions of power who've been to these schools, but these schools shut your heart down and they shut our emotions down. So we can't make good decisions. So it's time for us to change. It's time for us to put into positions of power those who haven't been to these schools. And, finishing, I know it's a longer video today, but we've got Reform Party in the UK and people are talking about Nigel Farage, and he's making the right sounds on one level, right? Let's do this, do that. But I'm looking at 4 or 5 of the people who are, in Parliament with Reform, and they're all ex-boarding school. So they all have the same traits as the Conservatives, wounded leaders of Boris Johnson, David Cameron. They might consciously say, this is what I want to do. But if they've not looked at the inner work, they've not done what Kouzes and Posner say, model the way, they've not gone within, they're just going to play out exactly what the Tories have done. And, Richard Tice went to Uppingham boarding school. Ben Habib went to Rugby. Rupert Lowe went to Radley. Nigel Farage didn't board, but he was at Dulwich, public school. So I think this is key. Is like we need to open a new awareness. We need new leaders in. And, that's my vision. We can change. We can change. I really feel that. So it's a longer video today. Thank you for listening. We're getting on with the film, possibly premiere in March. We're just looking at booking a few places, so I'll let you know, and then people can start booking their tickets. So blessings. Take care.